Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. In case anyone's wondering why I haven't been making videos outside, there's no nefarious reason why. It's just been really nasty weather the last few days here. We've had rain off and on, more on than off, for 4, maybe 5 days. I've lost track now. And at times it's been pretty gusty, windy, so I've decided to do it inside just to protect the equipment. I'm not that soft. It doesn't bother me, but I don't want my equipment to get too wet. So that's why, nothing else going on other than that. Today I want to kind of take a different turn and shift in the videos that I've been making. And I want to just talk about some thoughts. Not just thoughts, but also dreams. Now, before anyone starts to jump the gun, I am going to talk about a dream that I had actually just last night, but in no way whatsoever am I saying that this dream is anything predictive or prophetic. I believe that sometimes dreams can be that way, but most of the time I think our dreams are it's just our subconscious just letting go and thoughts bouncing around. And I understand that this is a subject I've been talking about a lot lately and thinking about, so that's very possible what's going on. So I just want to make it clear that in talking about this, I'm not insinuating that it's prophetic or anything like that. But I do want to talk about a dream that I had last night, and then just how it's inspired me to talk about what we're going to talk about today. Before I get started, I want to mention a business that is owned and run by a dear friend of ours. This isn't some big corporation. This is just, a business that she just runs on her own. There's a link in the description below. It's called Faith-Filled Essentials. And she makes, creams and soaps and personal products like that. In fact, she makes stuff that I use on my beard. She makes all kinds of stuff for the ladies and even stuff for the men, and it's really good quality stuff. In fact, the stuff that she sent me to put on my beard is probably the best quality stuff I've ever used. And it's all natural, it's all handmade. So if you're interested in anything like that, certainly give her a website a look. My personal feeling is I would much rather spend my money on a like-minded believer in their business than I would to someone that I don't even know where my money's going to, and especially some big box store. So if you're looking for that kind of stuff, faithfilledessentials.com. Like I said, there's a link down in the description below. So, I had a dream, and I'm not the type of person that does a lot of dreaming. If I do, it's not dreams that I can remember when I wake up. I don't dream every night or really often, but I am the type that when I do dream, they're very vivid. They're almost like a movie. I don't have a lot of like little dreams here and there. There's been many times I've had dreams that I've woken up and thought, man, that would be a good movie. How in the world did I come up with that? And so last night's dream was very much that way. And it's pretty simple. It was a dream of what's to come. All of the problems that we're having, that we talk about on here every day, okay? The things that you know about, the things that's in your mind, the worry, and it was how things will play out here for us individually, with food shortages, with the value of our currency just inflating more and more, and the possibility of having switched over to a digital currency, what the effect of potential world wars are going to have on us, and so on and so forth, all that kind of stuff. And so I want to talk about that because, again, this is opinion, but I think a lot of people have this idea that either things are going to be okay or things are going to be so catastrophically bad that it's going to be like some Hollywood movie, say like Mad Max or the Book of Eli, where there is no law, there is no government, there's no stability whatsoever, and it's just every man for himself. And a lot of people, I think, a lot of the hardcore preppers or the ones that really kind of geek out on this stuff, kind of think that the anarchy, the no government may be a good option because, you know, I can just take care of myself. I don't need law to enforce things. I'll enforce it my way. And I've said on this channel several times in the past, I don't really think that scenario is ever going to happen. In fact, I can only think of a very few possible scenarios that would completely collapse governments. And even if our government completely collapsed and was no longer existent, global governments would certainly step in very rapidly and fill in the gap. So I don't think that we're ever going to see a time where there is absolute anarchy, that there is no law whatsoever. There's no enforcers, there's no government, there's nothing. I just don't ever think that's going to be a scenario. So I just wanted to make that clear and get it out of the way. Could be wrong, but that's just kind of how I think. In my dream, I remember seeing images that would look like images we've seen in maybe movie reels and stuff of World War II in Europe, of how bad it was for people. Cold winters where people were bundled up on the streets, trying to survive, trying to find food, trying to you know, just get the basics to exist. Images that we've probably seen in pictures and photographs of the Great Depression here in America, and especially in large cities. Images that would come out of, say, Venezuela, or you know, Germany prior to World War I, or between World War I and World War II, 1920s Germany. This was the imagery that I remember seeing in my dream, where people were you know, hungry, and there was still government, but there was a lot of poverty and there was a lot of hardship. And there became a much wider gap in the social standings of people. You had the wealthy, and they were doing good, you know, because the very upper class, they kind of plan for it, and they're always in a good place because they have the resources to ensure their survival. And the middle class pretty much was no more. Maybe the upper middle class was pushed up, but pretty much everyone from the middle to all the way down was basically in poverty. And it was very difficult. And the only ways that they could survive were basically taking government handouts. I am old enough, and I know that there's many on here that are older, that certainly can remember the old government commodities. Where you would sign up and you would go on a certain date and you would pick up these commodities, and there would be big chunks of cheese and big things of peanut butter and other things like that, you know. And it was not brand names. It was stuff that was packaged through usually some type of contract with the government and some kind of company that packaged it. And you would receive these commodities. This is the kind of thing that I saw in the dream. I think that this is the likely scenario of where we're going to head. I think other countries, especially your already poverty-ridden countries, mostly in Africa, South America, a lot of those countries, maybe all, India, some of your South Asian countries, I think that it is going to be very close to a Mad Max Book of Eli scenario where whether it's the government or just the wealthy rise up as almost a warlord because the poverty is going to be so bad. I think that there's going to be probably a lot of starvation, a lot of deaths. Many of us remember back in the 80s and early 90s, a lot of images coming out of Africa, places like Ethiopia, where, you know, people were just starving, and they still exist to this day, but it has improved in a lot of those countries where people were just falling over dead in the streets and in the deserts because, you know, of starvation. They didn't have what they needed to survive, and I think that we could see that again, but probably even worse. When we look at all the stuff, how it's lining up. Here in America, we certainly produce a lot of food. And so the likelihood of us having maybe enough food, I think, is possible. But if you look at droughts and other things, other factors, lack of fertilizer, lack of pesticides, certain things, we are certainly producing less and less food. And the more recent outlook, or the closest outlook we can see over the next few years, it appears that we're going to continue down that path of producing less and less food. If we completely isolated ourselves, could we produce enough food to feed us? Probably. I mean, based on the reduction of production that we are doing, yeah, we probably could. But the thing is we're not isolated, and the odds are that we would not be isolated in a situation like this. I don't think there's any politician that's going to stand around and watch large amounts of the rest of the world starve to death while we have mostly enough. I think we're going to be involved in exporting a lot of our food, whether through giving it away for free or just selling it in general. I think the cost of things are going to go so high that it's going to be difficult to just have enough food on hand. And so that's what I was seeing in this dream, of just a lot of desperation. That there were wars in the dream. There wasn't a lot of specifics on that. If my dream, it was like I was just looking onward in the future, and I wasn't getting a lot of real specifics. Who was fighting in these wars? How did the wars, transpire? It wasn't like that, but there were definitely global wars. I think that there's a pretty good chance that here in the United States we may not feel the direct effects of conventional wars and heated combat, although it's possible. It's certainly possible, and if China gets involved, and I think that's an inevitability, they definitely have the capabilities of bringing a war to our soil. So that is a possibility, but long drawn out wars, they in the end make things worse. And with the way the past has gone in wars and the way our government currently is, I would say we would most likely see a rapid degradation of our freedoms in a global war. I think that they would use it as an advantage to just strip away what few freedoms we have left. I think we're going to see this because, and some of you disagree with this, and that's fine, but I think it aligns up biblically with how we start to get into those end times. I think we're kind of in that birthing pains time, that days of Noah. And I think the world has to be set up to go into what we see about in the end time prophecies and in Revelation and Isaiah and Daniel, where there is, the Antichrist rises up and brings about global peace. I've talked about this personally to a lot of people, and many of you believe the same way. And if you don't, that's fine. You don't have to say, this guy's a kook. If you don't believe me or don't agree with me, that's okay. The world has to be in a pretty bad situation for the world to come together in unison under one government and one leader. Even right now, as much as globalism is being pushed upon the world and this unified, one world government voice, the vast majority of the nations, if not all, on this planet are very hesitant or outright, refusing to relinquish their sovereignty to be under a one world government. For them to be able and to be willing to get to that point to relinquish that much sovereignty, it tells me that things are going to get really bad. We've read, and many of us, in Matthew 24 of what it's going to look like. I think it's going to be much worse than we can imagine. And so that's what I was seeing in this dream. A lot of poverty, a lot of hunger, a lot of just really, really hard times that Americans have never seen, worse than the Great Depression and anything that we saw during that time period of America. For those of us that try to be as self-reliant as possible and raise our own food, we certainly have an advantage. The problem is that in times like that, we're also going to see a rise in violence. We're already seeing it. The last couple of years, every big city in this country has seen a pretty hard spike in crimes, violent crimes, thefts, rapes, murders. They've all gone up. And as society starts to crumble, and as money becomes less valuable, and as food becomes less available, we're going to see that continue to rise. And so for those of us that live out like we do and that have our own food and stuff, we're going to become a target. And they're going to want to come out. They're going to figure it out that there's people out there that have a lot of food, that have either stored away or they raise their own food, and we want some because we're starving to death. And when people get to that point of starvation, our humanity changes. We kind of lose it. Our civility is really gone, and people are really all over are capable of doing really bad things to take care of that hunger. And so it makes us a target. Now, I know a lot of you say, well, that's why we have those things that go boom. And we'll just take care of the problem because out here, it'll be our kind of law. That's possible, and that is portrayed in a lot of Hollywood movies. But we have to realize that our government and virtually all world governments have spent lots and lots of money and time and resources in planning contingency plans, planning out continuance of government's plans. And it's highly unlikely that they're just going to not be out here. It's highly unlikely that they're just going to go away. It's also unlikely that, at least on a state and national level, that government is going to be on your side. We've already seen it through all of the riots for the last couple of years, that too many times when someone was actually protecting their own property or protecting others' properties, that they were the ones that were actually prosecuted. It wasn't the rioters. It wasn't the people, doing the violence. It was the people that were protecting their own that were prosecuted. And so that's something to consider. It may not just be, fine, we'll just handle the law in our own way out here. It may not work that way. We also have to contend with that government could very possibly start not just rationing food, but confiscating food. And then that's why I tell people all the time, do not tell anyone how much you have and what you have. Don't post it online. I see people all the time. I know I have a YouTube channel. Have you ever seen me post what I have? No, you have no clue what I have. And it's done that way very purposefully. You don't see much of images of our property, of what we have. I don't tell people how much we have, how much land we have. It's all done for a reason. You need to be very careful. Don't think that, if this happens, let's say 2 years from now, that they can't go back 2 years or 3 years and start looking at your Facebook post that shows pictures of your storeroom. They'll find that and they'll come after it if things get bad enough. I know this dream sounds like a really bad doomsday scenario, and it's possible that it could happen. I also understand that it's just a dream and it may not happen, and things could turn around or may not get that bad. But I do think that the dream is well within the realm of possibility, and that is part of why we prepare and how we get ourselves ready and also make connections with communities. And then along the way, something that I don't say often enough is make connections with local governments, especially out here in the countryside, the local sheriff's departments, the local county commissioners. There's a much higher chance, a much higher probability that they're going to be on your side because they live out here like you. And so building relationships and encouraging the right local officials, it's about the only kind of politics that I really support anymore, because it can afford a little bit of a buffer between you and the big powers that come down. It may not be a long living buffer, but it can have a little bit of effect. Again, this dream I don't think is necessarily a prophetic dream, but I think it's a very likely scenario of what we could see. And I think that this is why I get on here so often, on a pretty much a daily basis. And a lot of times it seems like I'm repeating myself and telling you things that I've already told you before, and you're kind of revisiting how bad it could be. Because I think we're headed into that era of our existence. We're not going there. We're already in there, and things are getting worse. And when you stand back and you look at the totality of everything that's happening right now on this earth, politically, environmentally, supply chains, food, socially, how the moral degradation and traditional collapse in our society is going, I don't see that there's any other direction this could really happen and head to. So again, I just want to encourage you to continue on this path of preparedness and readiness, because I think that this is the path that we're headed down. How long it will take to get there, I don't know. But I think that that is the eventual destination. So get your houses in order, folks. Continue to prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and most especially spiritually. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.